We're excited to welcome back to the show one of our favorite guests and the new coach of the Gwangju Peppers in Korea. Thanks for joining us again, Joe.
Good to be here.
I feel like it's our yearly thing. We got to do this, and if you're in Korea, if you're in Delaware, if you're in Europe, wherever you are, we've got to find a way to get together once a year. But it'd be fun first to kind of hear how life is in Korea. Not so much we'll get into lots of volleyball, but just kind of what are some of the I don't know non-volleyball highlights? Like what are you learning being over in that culture?
Yeah, life's awesome. I think one of the good things about it is, and this is pretty typical, apartments real close to the gym. So I got to set up a nice apartment's close to the gym so I can walk to the gym. And wife and daughter can walk over kind of like during lunchtime, see them and stuff like that. So just kind of engineering the lifestyles is always important there. And then just kind of the culture of being here is really it's really interesting. My wife and I both we've been to Asia a lot. We've been to Korea before, so it's less of a culture shock and just more of just kind of enjoying the kind of excitement of volleyball here. People are really fired up about the pro league. It's been around for a while here, and it's even growing. It's real popular. I think it's the second most watched on TV pro sport behind baseball here. So people are just really pretty fired up for volleyball, and got a lot of resources. So I don't know. That's kind of the fun. I don't know. You asked me a question about like what it's like to live in culture and like gain and learn and grow, and I just talked about volleyball. So I guess that shows you kind of where my my head is at. But we kind of experience the world through the things that we love, and it's been just interesting. Something I've said a lot about. I joke a lot about volleyball is everybody's just a 14-year-old kid. At the end of the day, no matter what level you're coaching, college, pro, indoor, beach, men, women, boys, girls. And this is just the most extreme proof of that. You know, just all the little things that I'm sure we'll get into about how I like to coach the game, which is a lot of what you guys talk about on here. And he just kind of shines through. And when you can connect with people's inner 14-year-old kid, and when you can unleash that, like that's just the fun part. So it's just for me, it's just I don't know, kind of this like humanist lesson of like at the end of the day, like we love play and the reasons why we love play.
I'm gonna steer you, just get one more cultural. How about, has there been one food that you've tried or one kind of new cuisine that stuck out?
Yeah, so the team basically has a cafeteria. So they provide breakfast, lunch, dinner to all the players and staff. I typically only eat lunch there. I eat well, like probably a lot of coaches listening to it, you just get breakfast and you get right into the office. So you get some uninterrupted time in the morning. And then I ate lunch and I eat dinner with my family. So I eat lunch and I eat whatever. I eat whatever. I usually don't know what it is. But it's, again, it's kind of like at the end of the day, you're going to have some meat, you're going to have some veggies, you're going to have some spices. It's going to be in a broth, put some rice, put it on top of a starch. So it's always fun when sometimes it's like, when you eat more Western food, which in the United States, of course, that includes like more like Spanish food and stuff like that. You usually kind of like you get a gauge for what's going to be spicy and what's not going to be spicy. But then like when you're in a very new cuisine, sometimes it's like, oh, I didn't think a clear thing would be very spicy or something like that. It's like, oh, I didn't recognize it, didn't give me the spicy color indication. So then sometimes you get a little surprised by something like that. And like every now and then they have something like I don't know, the other week, they just had like burger patties at the for lunch. And then like the whole team was like really fired up, like, oh, Joe, burgers, so it's like they were all like fired up to like just watch me have some burgers. And then they made me put kimchi on them, which was actually pretty good.
All right, well, we'll dive into volleyball now. What have been some of the challenges in being a new coach in a new place?
Yep. Same challenge of you going to a new high school program or something like that, just amplified because hey, they had one way of playing volleyball, and now I'm teaching a real different way of playing in a lot of ways, real different. And so you have egos that get threatened, you have roles that might be changing, you have things that they were comfortable with doing, and you have the huge barrier of almost none of the players on the team speak English. So none of the Korean players speak conversational English, even conversational English. A few of the Korean players speak, they could just like typically with a foreign language, you can like read a little more than you can hear, and you can hear more than you can say. So almost none of the players are really comfortable speaking any, and some of them, and some of one of the good things, some of the volleyball terms are the same. Serve, block, like they say, all those kind of things. And then you have your system words that for us some are kind of English or semi-English or English that I try to speak with a Korean accent, or it's Korean word that I'm butchering constantly, but doing my best. So we kind of had this sort of hybrid language in there, but it's a big, the communication is a big challenge, and then like kind of the hardest thing is not so much the volleyball. It's actually like it's hard to have a sense of humor when you have to make a joke through a translator. It's hard to just have those little like how's your day going without it feeling like a job interview. So that's actually the hardest part. And there's a really strong hierarchical tradition in how volleyball is coached here, and the head coach is very much expected to be like very distant and aloof, which is not really my style. So it's I probably don't feel more aloof than they're used to, but I feel way more aloof than I'm used to. So it's actually kind of just more of a, in some ways, probably more of a challenge for me.
Billy, that'd be your dream job. You can go coach in Korea. You'd be distant and aloof. Just crush it.
Never make any jokes.
Yeah, I thought it was funny and nobody's laughing. What have been some of the highlights?
Oh, like I said, I mean, just kind of picking the lock. That's always, I think that's always the fun for any coach, is when you feel like you kind of make those breakthroughs, and now the players like starting to get like something that you're working with them on, and okay, you got to work with them, and then they're like really starting to do it, and they kind of know they made that change. They're fired up. You can just see like that confidence where they're getting fired up on taking the next level. I mean, that's just volleyball coaching anywhere, but there is something like kind of cool and rewarding about I don't know, it just shows to me like the power of coaching. It's I know they say like math is the universal language, but I might have to add play to that, because just this kind of unlocking that stuff and being like, oh sick, yeah, they like the goofy doubles games that I make up before practice too. Like it's like, yeah, everybody loves that. So just I mean, to be honest, like it's pretty cool. Like I can really say a lot of the stuff that you talk about here on Coach Your Brains Out, just all these kind of learning methods. I mean, it's such a showcase of the universality of a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you mentioned the dynamic between coach and player, like the hierarchy is way different and the traditions there. Could you go more into maybe the on court, like the training style? What was the traditional way they're used to, and I guess how are you bringing about, and what are you bringing that's different from what they're used to?
Yep. It's hard to even communicate to an American audience. Like, I think volleyball in the United States, what you constantly hear is like, oh, we need to get like more organized, and USA volleyball, they need to like systematize the system of play and stuff like that. If you want to see like the complete other end of that spectrum, like come to Korea. So to a first approximation, every Korean team does the same practice all the time, like constantly, to the point like, so it's like coach on 1 defense, coach on 3 defense, rapid fire serve pass, hitting lines, and scrimmaging. That's basically all they ever do at practice. And I'm sure like there's some other teams here in the league that, and maybe every now and then they do some different stuff, or like there's some individual variety, but like to a first approximation, that's just how they practice all the time, constantly. So because I'll tell you what's something that's like pretty interesting. There's a draft here in Korea, so it's I don't know, like an NFL draft, basically. Like the rookies that want to come into the league and they get drafted out of high school, when they want to come into the league, there's a draft. So it's not like European professional volleyball where they just sign contracts. So the players have to be drafted into the league, and there's like a lottery system, and somebody gets the first overall pick, et cetera, et cetera. And there's basically like a draft combine, like a draft tryout. So all the players that are eligible and want to be in the draft come to the draft, and coaches come and watch the workout. And kind of usually it's kind of like, hey, some of the assistants from the teams, they kind of get out there and run the players through the drills and stuff like that. And so it just kind of here shows you nobody needed to explain any drills, like basically the whole time. the explanations for the drills couldn't have taken more than 10 seconds. So if you imagine like a USA, HP, or whatever they call it now, tryout, you know, where some high schoolers, you know, some 17, 18-year-old high schoolers are going to come in, and like some HP coaches that they've never met before are going to run them through some drills. It's going to take you a few minutes to explain things. Even like hitting lines, it's going to take you a few minutes to set that up. These explanations couldn't have been 10 seconds. Hey, go out here and hit. Everybody's out there. So they're so used to some of these kind of drills and way of playing so much. They never had ever played a one-way side-out drill. They never played any kind of wash drill. They never did any, like, so when we put 6-on-6 on the board, you know, it's on the board or whatever like that, and my translator just, you know, like we get to that point, she's like, okay, 6-on-6, and the players just run out there and start playing, or like they get ready to start playing. I'm like, wait, I got to explain the rules. And they're like, wait a minute, what do you mean? The rules of volleyball? Like we serve and we pass and we hit and then we rotate, we do that stuff. I'm like, well, no, like, hey, what we're gonna do is we're gonna be in this rotation. We got to side out 3 out of 5 times to rotate, like that. And everybody's like, you know, like, what is this crazy guy talking about? So, but I mean, like they adapt pretty quickly. But it's you know, they're like just that kind of stuff. Like they're so used to that kind of just what they do constantly. So just get through all those barriers.
With all that strong of a tradition, and that's probably deep in the culture and the education system and just the way everything's set up. If you're bringing something which I imagine is kind of the opposite, then how do you get buy-in? How do you get them to be motivated to be all in? And are you meeting them sometimes halfway? Like, how are you adjusting on your end?
Yeah. I want to say the buy-in hasn't been as hard because the team's won 7 matches in the last 2 years. So when you're coming off a 5-31 season, there's not a lot of that. And like I said, there's a huge culture of kind of coaching hierarchy, especially as it relates to the head coach. So it's the harder part is getting somebody to like stop and listen and understand and not just say nay, because that's what they're kind of like trained to do. Coach says anything, they just shout nay, which is yes, back at them. And I'm like, I have to say, like, I had to say it less now, but I had to say, hey, if you don't understand, that's my fault. If you don't understand and you don't ask a question, that's your fault. Like I just have to say that a bunch of times. So that is, I mean, the coaching staff, you know, because they had a lot of meetings and say, hey, you know, we got to explain what we're trying to teach and stuff like that. So I have more like pushback from that, and actually that led to some productive conversations. And it's almost just been more like it's less about pushback and more just about like requiring some imagination. Like again, like the United States, you just take it for granted. Like, okay, Billy coaching at Cal, he's coaching his players that played in club and high school. Like you just kind of take it for granted. They came from 10 different club programs, so they're gonna have 10 different ways that they learn to do this. Yeah, these kids, these players, they might have came from 10 different high schools here. They were all doing it the same way. So it's more just like, hey, there actually is some different ways to play it. And there's like a lot of self-limiting beliefs. So a lot of in the beginning, it was like, oh, well, like European players can do that, but like Korean players can't do that. Or like, American players, that's USA can do that, but Korean players can't do that. So there's like a lot of these like kind of self-limiting beliefs. So like, so that kind of stuff, or just kind of like the creativity. So a lot of that was showing video, and I've been trying to be conscious of like not, hey, I'm not just like you're not just showing the USA team and we're copying the USA team. First of all, it's not everything that they're doing is right fit for us or the way I want to do things. So I'm trying to show like a variety of, and this is I think important video anyway. So I show like, hey, here's men's video, here's women's international video, here's even some high school video, here's college video, here's players that look like this, here's players that look like that, all different. And I'm trying to get to like this one particular principle. And now that we're starting to like just barely kind of tip over into playing a little bit in the way that we want to play, now we start watching a little bit of our own video too. Okay, hey, here's what we looked like a couple months ago. Here's what we look like now. If we keep trending in that direction, we keep sharpening that piece of our game up, hey, we can go even further.
So you have, you know a lot about skill acquisition and motor learning, and you have principles that you abide by. but it sounds like you might need to adapt them. I don't know. I guess, is it like, how firm do you feel like you have to stay with them if you feel like you have a better way, versus kind of, maybe, I don't know if compromising the right word. I guess, how do you kind of work through that sort of scenario?
I would say in some ways it's actually like even more important to be like really sharp on the motor learning stuff and the things I believe in from that, because you can't I just can't really out explain poor I don't know, like learning or poor learning environment. You know, something that I think is like the hallmark of, and something think it was Winkleman was talking about it and talking about internal cueing, and he's basically kind of saying like sometimes advanced players, you can get away with some internal cueing because they have such a strong image of the skill in their mind anyway.
Hmm.
Sometimes doesn't matter what you say to them, they'll convert it into like what they know how to do, and it doesn't mean it's like helpful, but it's like almost like less destructive. And so there's not even that ability to kind of like throw out an explanation and something like that, or talk through it. Like you just have to, I have to be like real clean and real precise with the training environment, and have to be like real sharp with constraints, real sharp with if we're using video, if we're using differential to teach something like that, just because I don't have that out of being like, well, hey, well, so we have two foreign players on the team who speak English. Um, there's a couple of them, but like in general, like if I'm coaching the setters, like I don't have that ability to just, oh, like, hey, like, well, what we're really trying to get done in this drill is this and this and this and that. Oh yeah, okay, now I understand what you mean. Like it's almost like got to make sense the first time, or it just really goes to crap. And it's got to not that everybody here is like the communication level is almost like how you would talk to a 6-year-old, because I try to have as much of the communication come directly from me as possible. Like there's some things that the translator's got to say, especially if it's like, okay, hey, we're going to meet on the team bus at 8 o'clock tomorrow, and then we're going to do this now. Okay, like, okay, that's got to go through the translator and all that. But like, I don't want the cueing to like have to come from the translator. So it's like, then the cueing's got to be like one word, you know, gakto, you know, or something like that. Okay, and hey, maybe we had a little conversation about what that means, and then we gotta, which is like I think a lot in theory how we want to do it, right? Like, hey, we want to sit down with the player, maybe watch a little video, you want to discuss something, and then we kind of, okay, hey, so this is the cue, like this is what we mean by, like, this is what that word or phrase is capturing, this whole kind of feeling of that. Okay, so then when I say that to you, that's what that means out on the court, and that's what you're going to remind yourself of. So you just got to be sharper with it, actually, in a lot of ways. Now, I think part of what you're maybe asking also is like, kind of, hey, technically, hey, if this passer is used to doing something like this and they've had some success with that way, am I going to totally change the passing style? So I think like the technique is where I'm like most interested in meeting people halfway, because whether like motor pattern is the phrase that we're allowed to use now, or whatever that is, like just call them habits. Like they have some habits that are like could be more ingrained. And okay, like I'm willing to like try to take things more one at a time, like rather than say like, hey, everything that you're doing about playing volleyball is bad, which like is not the case. Like there's a lot. I mean, they're good players. I mean, so that's where I'm like most winning. But I'm not like, hey, you're used to doing this like endless repetition of coach on one on defense, so like we'll still do some of that. Like, nah, we're just like not doing any of that.
Yeah, I could see how it'd be like, oh, I first want to get them to, I don't know, kind of like believe in me, and I could see wanting to kind of do what they know and maybe tweaking it slightly, but it's cool that you're sticking to what you believe in, and I guess I believe in what you understand, and implementing that. So I respect that. Going into culture, which is not something I think of with you, maybe unfairly, I think of you with I think of training, I think of analytics, and I mean, I know you're great with relationships too and culture, but I think of that as like less measurable. So I don't think of you with something like that. But is that, I guess, as you come into a new program, I know a lot of coaches talk about, that's the first thing, we got to get the culture right. So I was curious how you came into, a new team and a different culture, and how you kind of built your culture, maybe the Joe Trinsey way.
Well, John, robots and artificial intelligences do have culture too. So no, no culture. I think culture is real important, and I'm probably just a little less sophisticated and less intuitive about it probably than a lot of coaches. So I try to just stick with some kind of simple stuff from culture's culture something where I don't try to reinvent the wheel. I guess I would say is I probably tinker with tinker with the analytics or tinker with some of the technical stuff because I feel like a stronger skill set there. Whereas culture, I generally don't reinvent the wheel. I just kind of it's a lot of from people that you've had on your guests and stuff like that. So I mean, yeah, the Coach Your Brains Out book club can kind of write the culture stuff here. So a lot of it's I mean, a lot of what we've been doing here is just basic growth mindset stuff and just hey, if I worked hard, it translates to improved performance because this team has had really bad performance for a couple of years. So now we got there's some new players on the team. Like I said, there's a couple free agents. So it's not the same exact roster, but it's pretty similar. And so I guess I would just say like just consistency. So like for example, in press interviews, I got asked a lot about, hey, the team didn't win a lot last year. What's your plan for this year? What's your goal? Like constantly getting asked, like in different press interviews and media stuff here. Hey, what's your goals? How many, this and that. And I just say, I don't believe in goals. I, I believe in getting better every day. I don't believe in that. I just believe in learning every day. So I just I constantly say that, and I constantly say that to the players. It's like all I talk about. Hey, this I don't care what you did last year because it's a different team. I don't care what any team did last year. I did share. So I mean, I did share a little bit about, for example, in USA, I was good fortune of being a gold medal winning team. We won the world championship in 2014, and then the next year we didn't win it because other teams learned and they got a little bit better at the right times. So and then it didn't matter that then I mean, like it did matter because it's a great accomplishment to win it, the world championship, but it didn't matter at the next year's World Cup. Like before the next year's World Cup matches, it's not like the ref awarded us 2 extra points because we had just won the world championship. If anything, you're at a disadvantage because now the other team went and knocked you out. So I say that, hey, the other teams that won or they were in the finals or whatever last year, hey, that's great for them. And I don't care. It doesn't have everybody 0-0. And actually, one of the cool things about kind of the Korean League is it's kind of this round robin schedule. It's a crazy long. Well, it's not a crazy long season, but there's only 7 teams in the league. But you play 36 matches, so you play 6 full round robins. So it's probably got a little bit of a feel of some of you guys in the AVP where you're playing the same people a lot. You could play the same team 6 times in an AVP season, I would imagine. So something that I've kind of talked about is like, hey, we want to be the best, the most improved team in the turning block. So from now until the first round, and then we want to be the most improved team from the first round to the second round, and then from the second, third, and so on and so forth. And if we do that, the record will be fine. The record will show up. But one of the interesting things just with, for example, with kind of growth mindset and like wanting to get into improvement is, so for me, I'm trying to show a lot of things that show or measure the improvement. So this has been pretty different for them. So it's just very, there's a lot of like, I don't know, kind of like beast of burden feel to their practice environment. You do coach on 1 until the coach is ready to stop. And you do coach on 3 until the coach is ready to stop. And then you serve and you pass, so there's not a lot of like feeling of like, hey, am I like getting better at this? It's more of like, am I enduring this? And I think from a strength and conditioning standpoint, it's also like, it's just, there's nothing you can do more to kill the athleticism of some of these players. But anyway, so it's like kind of what they're doing. So a lot of what, for example, like the beginning of every practice, like, hey, we test our vertical jump, we put it up on the board. And they have, so far there's like a fatigue measurement there, right? Are we like too fatigued or something like that? But then it's also like, hey, I'm like working hard in the strength and conditioning program and my jump is going up. And then we test our velocity off the speed gun. So not every, I say every practice, like there's some, where we have like a lighter serve pass practice, but like basically every practice where we're going hard, hey, we test our velocity off the speed gun, basically off jump serve. And is that going up? So if there's some players, hey, 5 kilometers an hour higher than it is. And I'll give you like a pretty, again, you kind of want to hear this growth mindset stuff. It's like, so one player, her previous best had maybe it was 80 kilometers an hour. And then she hit 184 or something like that. And she kind of was having some interaction a little bit and kind of like talking to the translator. But kind of like said something and was sort of walking away. And I was like, hey, what was she saying? And she's saying, oh, like she didn't want to put it on the board because then tomorrow she would have like a higher mark to try to get. And like, I mean, I not like to call that player out individually, but like at a later date, like a later time in that practice, I said, in a hypothetical example where this happened, if any of you does something like that, I'll just lose it. Like I just like that, just nothing like made me more infuriated with that. But just like that kind of mentality. Like, you know, it's like an avoidance of work mentality rather than a progress. Because I think I also needed to convince these players that like, well, I do mean it. Like it's just for your individual improvement. And like I think like, hey, on this Coach Your Brains Out podcast, we kind of take it for granted the statement like, hey, a coach is here to help the players. But like I don't think that's how they like viewed it as much. So like now, like I think we've mostly like crossed that bridge where like the players are excited for that. Yeah, hey, yeah, I want the higher challenge, and we do like a lot of ladder drills, and hey, yeah, we want to get up to the like we when we do doubles, we ladder the doubles. So yeah, oh yeah, I don't want to be down on court 4 doing the doubles. Like I want to be up on court 1. So I mean, again, like we would say that as like pretty standard growth mindset stuff, but it's standard because it works. So I guess say from a culture standpoint, yeah, just all your good podcasts that you've been doing with the guests that are really good there. I just write down what they recommend, and then I try to do it.
You heard that, listeners. Even Joe listens. So you mentioned obviously the language barrier and like the hierarchy structure there with the maybe a distanced head coach. How have you been able to build relationships and connections with the players?
Yeah. So I had like some introductory meetings with all kind of pretty much all the players. Talked about this in my Substack a little bit. Just, hey, tell me 3 things I need to know about you. What are things you're feeling good about your game? What are you not? They were all extremely awkward. They felt like job interviews. Even a couple of the players said that because it's like I got it. Because these things I got to ask. I got to go through the translator. So like I say something, the players like sitting there waiting for the translator to translate it. Then she says it to the translator. Then it goes back to me. So there's like zero feeling of like rapport building or anything, anything like that. But okay, still kind of did that stuff. I'm like, hey, you got to kind of put in the work and try to get some background knowledge on some of these players, and it was helpful. And then other than that, it's like pretty much like on the court. Hey, we're working together. I'm helping you get better. You're enjoying getting better. You're playing better volleyball. I'm in here helping you. And I think that's improving some relationships. It's also kind of one of these things where it's like, it's, hey, when you coach, I don't know, like maybe club volleyball, or maybe some of you, like I would bet, hey, when you're coaching a fellow professional on the beach, or you know, something like that, there's like a feeling of like, hey, you're a coach and also a friend. There's not a lot of that feeling here, and I think it's not really like desired by the players. And I think that's also okay. And like I don't know, sometimes if you coach like a 12 and under club team, you're like the big you're like the fun uncle almost, is like almost the role you have with the players, and they are going to do that. And not the fun uncle on the team either. And that's not. And so I mean, so part of that is just I think that is where demographics and culture and even your age as a coach and all that kind of stuff is different with every team you play. And that's just I think typically a professional women's team, I wasn't going to be everybody's buddy anyway, because they're in different spots in life and all that with me. But everybody does like jokes and humor. And so I think a little self-effacing humor, which is generally kind of my style, goes a little bit of a ways. There's this big tradition in Korean volleyball where basically anytime like an elder, so this is even like an older player to the younger players, or a coach, especially the head coach, like essentially enters the room, so like enters the gym. Like if you're younger, you have to like get up. If you're lower in the hierarchy, you have to like get up, walk over to that person, and annyeonghaseyo, and like bow a little bit. So it's like literally like it's a chorus. Like, so because if I come in as a head coach, you're at the top of the hierarchy, which is also weird because I'm by far the youngest head coach in the league, and I'm younger than one of the assistant coaches, a couple of the assistant coaches, one who's not around anymore for part of this reason. So that's hard. That's like weird in the hierarchy, but okay, I'm the top. So it's like everybody's coming. 안녕하세요. Everybody has to like come over and say that, and I'm like, just stop it, go back. Stop. Like, I had to make an announcement. Do not like, please. They'll be in the middle of foam rolling or something like that. Hey, don't stop foam rolling. Walk over here and say that. Just give me a wave. And like, I make it like a joke about it, like, because we had to have like whole team meeting about this. And now like they still do it, but like there's a sense of like they'll do it to annoy me. Because sometimes they'll stay on the foam roller and give a wave, and that's fine. But then sometimes they'll do it just to like annoy me a little bit, I think. So that's like a good sign. I always think if the players are making jokes to annoy the coach or do little subtle things like that, that's a sign of comfort. So I'm good with that. Like and even in the team cafeteria, like I'd come out of there, I'd come into the cafeteria and everybody would get out of line to let me eat first. And then I would sit down and refuse to eat, and we had like a stare off, and it was like pretty funny. Like everybody was kind of laughing about it. And now I'll like peek in the window and like make a show that I'm like peeking in the window to make sure that everybody's gotten their food, and all of that. So we just kind of make some jokes about it, and I think that stuff comes along. But then like hopefully we'll win, because if we lose a lot, then the relationships will probably suck too.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering. What, like, I mean, those are great stories, and it's cool to hear the connection building in a different way. Like you're finding ways to connect with them, maybe not the way we think of as a coach, but yeah, you're finding ways to do it. But I was curious what if you've thought about like what would make this a successful season for you, for the team. Like how are you going about measuring that?
Improvement. Yeah, I mean the same. I mean, it's a professional team, so we're measured on wins and losses. And there's a sense there, right? It's like running a business. If your business doesn't make a profit, you have to fire all the employees and close the business. So like if we don't win, players, like I'll get fired, players will get cut and stuff like that. Not everybody, but some people will. So there's, we want to win, we want to make the playoffs. So that's kind of the I don't know, like the kind of the obvious answer. But then like the day-to-day answer is like I generally like don't think about that. I just think about trying to be the best team that we can be. And I think so it's kind of like any team. You might have whether you can, like, I mean, same thing for you, John, at LMU, right? Like if you guys go through a horrific streak of losing, like you'll probably be fired. There'll be a new coach, and it'll just be a different team. It's not what the team wants to do. But then like on the day-to-day basis, if all you think about is you're winning and losing, it's like you have to try as hard as you can to win, but like not make everything about winning, because in that, again, all the stuff that you guys talking about all the time. So it's the same thing, nothing new here.
You feel an added pressure? Like, I mean, they invested a lot bringing you out there. They haven't been successful. Like, has that affected your ability or I don't know, do you see it affecting as you guys go through the season, staying on that more process improvement based mindset?
Now I'll tell you the cool thing is it's actually the exact opposite. It's actually one of the most fun things about being here, and because like I wasn't seeking this out. It wasn't something I was intending to do. I had my little kind of weird offbeat setup in the States that I was really enjoying, and I wasn't really intending to do this. And I'm not going to be here forever. So it's a 2-year contract, and that's kind of the plan, is that I'll be here for 2 years. And who knows, something could happen. Something could happen, and I could end up being here for more than 2 years, and like that. But like, and just genuinely, like, I really just like, I don't know. I don't feel like I'm like, oh, this is like my long-term job. I'm so like concerned about losing it or like that. But the good thing about it is like that I'm like, okay, so I'm just going to do the best that I know how to do. Like it's actually like really great, because I don't feel any pressure with that. It doesn't mean that I don't want to like win, and I'm not like furious if we have a bad project. Like it's the same. It's all the same thing. But like I totally don't feel any of the external stuff, which is actually like really freeing as a coach, because I'm just like, hey, all I'm going to do is just coach the best way that I know how.
Yeah, it'd be cool if all coaches could get to that space. That's awesome. Okay, so I wanted to go into our second part, which was a little bit inspired by Billy, as Billy is now had his first, kind of in the middle of his first coaching season in college. He's coaching at Cal, and he's been kind of throughout the year, he'll send me a text randomly, or we'll get on a call and chat about stuff. And most time I'm like, I don't know. And so I just figured if we got Joe here, we might as well do an Ask Joe anything, an AMA of a sort. So a lot of these were questions Billy has already asked me, or just stuff from your blog, which we've covered in the past, but been cool that you've been keeping everyone up to date on what you're doing there and kind of how you're implementing a lot of this. So if people want to follow up more, they can go to your Substack. But this first one was from one of the posts you did, I think within the last maybe month or two, where you talk about the idea of not using it. You advise against using we statements, like we got to make our serves, things like that. Can you go into why you advise against that?
Yeah, this is something I've been saying for a while, and I think it's always like I don't know if it's like saying it's like controversial, but like I think for a lot of people it doesn't always resonate with them. And I think that's like a good sign. If it doesn't resonate with you, it's a good sign, because the reason that we statements are destructive is because most of the time people don't actually mean we, they mean you, but they're trying to disguise it. So like we accept that, like we don't want to, like using a lot of you statements is probably not too productive. Like going in there, hey, you need to make your serve. Hey, you need to play harder. You need to play better. Like we're like, ooh, that's like a pretty extreme statement. Not that you would never say that, but it's like, well, that's a pretty extreme statement to say that. And so a lot of times people will say we to kind of cover that up. And I think people do it like subconsciously. It's kind of almost like a mannerism that's sort of been learned by the time somebody's in high school or college or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll come in the huddle and be like, hey, girls, we got to make our serves. But that's said by somebody who didn't just miss their serve. Like, so John, you haven't missed your serve yet this game. You've made both of your serves this game. And Billy just missed his last serve. So when you come in the huddle and you say, we need to make our serves, that's not what you mean. You mean that Billy needs to make his serve. And basically what it means is you're mad that Billy missed it. Even more specifically, it means that you're mad that Billy missed his serve, because Billy's not going to serve for another 4 rotations anyway. So it's going to be it's only 22-22. Billy's probably not even going to serve this game. So you're just really saying, I'm mad that Billy missed his last serve. And if I say a we statement, it kind of covers that up, but it doesn't really cover it up. Kind of like all of this stuff. And I think, like you kind of imagine it like a husband and wife. Hey, we need to make sure that we have some healthy food in her lunchbox when she goes to school. And your wife's like, well, I'm the one preparing the meal. So who is this we that you're talking about? So that's kind of what I mean about some of these we statements. Like if you generally mean a we, it's like, hey, Monday you prepare the lunch and Tuesday I prepare the lunch. And I'm like, hey, when we're at the grocery store, let's get some stuff, because hey, when I was making the lunch the last time, dude, I just put like a candy bar in there because I didn't have any fruit chopped up or something like that. That's a we statement that makes sense, because it is a we statement. And even like if you can get the we statement to be more of an I statement, that's even better. Hey, I'm finding that I'm not getting the best lunchbox prepared, or something like that. Or it's like, to make it like a volleyball, in a post-game match, hey, I'm having some struggle here with maintaining focus on my serve. Like, hey, let's sit down and talk about how we can, if this is a player talking about it, hey, I'm having a little trouble with this. Hey, let's figure out how we can maintain our focus better. Something like that. Hey, I'm feeling like I'm not totally entering the game ready to go because I'm letting myself get a little distracted in the pregame warm-up. Pregame warm-up's not as tight, and I'm not playing my best because of it. Can somebody here help me out? So that's what I mean by the we. If it's truly a we statement, hey, all good. But if you actually mean you, then only say it if you would say a you statement, which is a pretty, it's a pretty aggressive thing. So it's to be used sparingly.
Is there some middle ground I could use? Let's say I am, whether I'm a coach or a teammate of Billy's, and he's missing his serves and I'm making all mine. And I don't want to come in and say, we got to make our serves. I don't want to come in and say you, and kind of point him out. Is there some sort of language, or is it I just got to kind of take a deep breath and, move on myself?
I think in that case, probably just taking a deep breath and moving on is probably one of the ways to go. But I think if you could kind of phrase it in a way that you can back them up a little bit. I don't know. So I'm imagining like, okay, you guys out on the beach, John, you're the defender. If your servers, if your blocker's been missing some serves, maybe you say to them like, hey man, like you don't need to, like, hey, you don't need to win the game. Like in this case, you are turning into a you statement. So then you got to find the you statement. I think that you would feel comfortable saying, hey man, you don't need to win the game all at once with your serve. I got you on the defense. Hey, keep that serve in, and I'll dig up some of these balls. You don't need to win it all yourself, because that's probably kind of the message that you're trying to serve to them. If it's like just, hey, you need to be a better server, then in match is probably not the time for that. But maybe before the next practice, maybe part of that is, and it's like, obviously, like if it's a doubles team or something like that, then you're sitting down. Maybe you're sitting down with the stats, and you're saying, hey, look, man, this is 2 straight tournaments. You served in at 75%. We're having trouble scoring on your serve. We got to figure something out. And then maybe that could be the role for the coach to say, something like that. So that is where then the coach might not say we, the coach would say you. Hey, right now so I've had that conversation with a couple of players here. Hey, you're serving in 80%. We need to change what you're doing with your serve. You're not doing this spin serve anymore. You're hitting now we're going to a float serve, and here's why. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's a big difference between like, we can't do this, we can't miss, we can't make mistakes, versus here's some next steps. Like here we're gonna identify the problem, but also like let's come up with how I can either help out, how you're gonna make changes. Like that's a huge difference if you're gonna add in the you.
Yep.
Next question, Joe. What in-game stats are you taking, and how does that help you make decisions in the match?
Yeah, pretty simple here. I always think people, because I'm write a lot about stats and a lot of post game analysis and stuff like that. In game, I think pretty simple. I keep the triangle in game, so I like to kind of see which assets of the match we're winning and losing. Are we ahead in the third pass? Are we ahead in the first ball? Are we ahead in transition? And then just kind of individual passing and attacking. So as an individual, if it's player passing or attacking well. And then to kind of link them, like it's like, hey, are we kind of really, is it surpass? Is it really killing us? Or did I just notice that we gave up a couple balls, but we're still hanging in there in that phase? But I'm pretty straight up, pretty basic with the end game. And I try to approach it from the standpoint of like, well, what changes would I make? And then what information do I need to have to make that change? And sometimes your eye's pretty good. And I do think sometimes your eye can see things before the stats reflect them, because I'm not going to make a decision on it's a sample size of 6. So if somebody has passed 6 balls and I'm just not really going to look at the stats, I would trust my eye more. Well, okay, it was this opponent, this player that we're serving over there. We identified her as the serving target, and we served her 6 balls. And she's making some really good angles. She's looking really good. So I would trust that rather than say like, oh, we served her 6 balls and she passed 4 out of 6 in system. Like that doesn't mean anything compared to the previous research that hopefully that we've gone into. Maybe you've had stats from 50 or 100 of her previous receptions. So I would trust those more than the stats from the 6 receptions. But I might say like, wow, okay, like just her angles are looking really sharp or something like that. And then I would go to like, but do we think that we can break her down over time? Have I seen that happen in previous matches where it's like, hey, she's held up and then eventually she cracks, so maybe we can do that? Or if we had a plan to serve her because it's going to affect her attacking in some way, okay, then maybe I would do that. But then a lot of times maybe like between sets 2 and 3 is, hey, okay, this person's had a chance to attack 18 balls already and they're hit negative or something like that. Okay, that's it. Maybe your stats are coming in a little bit there, but just pretty much the boring stuff. Hit the triangle, and then individual passing and attacking.
I was thinking about the scenarios. So I don't know. You're the head coach. Do you have assistants that are tracking this? So you can be doing cartwheels and wave your hands and yell at the players during the play, or if you're, I guess, taking it more to maybe a club coach who it's just them. I've heard people, well, if I'm looking down and tallying half the time, I can't correct the players, I can't coach them, I don't have my finger on the pulse. Like, how do you balance that, and how do you think about those scenarios?
When I've coached club volleyball, which I've done recently, when I've coached club volleyball, I never kept stats in match. If I had an assistant, I would have them keep the stats. But when I was a club coach, I never kept stats because I also think that there's too much valuable teaching opportunity in club volleyball. And I was always really trying to teach, not even actually just the players on the court, but the players on the bench actually is a huge opportunity to teach. So I spent a lot of time, like I said, yeah, doing cartwheels and cheering on your team or whatever your style is there in game, and then also a lot of time kind of standing up, but down closer to where the players are standing up to say like, hey, like, did you see this? Or okay, let's see if we can call out free ball, down ball, or let's see if we can call out the tips when we see them over there, just to kind of keep, because okay, especially if you're coaching 13, 14 and unders, just that ability to maintain your attention in the game is challenging. Or if you run a 6-2 like a lot of club teams do, maybe you're standing over there by your setter who's getting ready to come in the game. Okay, hey, look at what they're doing on the block. Hey, look like they're leaving our right side pretty open every time. Look, hey, every time Jessica out there is moving forward, their middle's following her. So it looks like anytime that pass moves you forward, that back set's going to be wide open, something like that. Just those kind of teaching opportunities are pretty huge in club volleyball. So I don't want to pass them up for keeping the stats. And also a lot of times in club volleyball, I generally have more of a like, not equal playing time would not be right, but more of like a predetermined amount of playing time, especially for most of the tournament. So it'd be pretty rare in club volleyball that I would sub a kid out for playing poorly, unless she was playing poorly and now crying on the court, unless she's something like that. So I generally don't do that in club volleyball. Like I'm going to sub somebody out for playing poorly. And we're probably having something where it's like, hey, you play set one and you over there, you play set two or something like that. I probably have more of a predetermined. And then like probably until like maybe we get in the playoffs or something like that. But then I have kind of the time to sit and reflect. And if the assistant coach is able to keep some stats, maybe I can have something like that. But actually, usually I don't base it off within a tournament stats for club volleyball. Usually I've done more like, hey, you play set one and you play set two, and then set three. If we go to set three, whoever's team won their set, then that player would get to play, or something like that. I usually do it more based off that kind of stuff.
So I've been taking triangle during my matches for the last couple of years, and I've liked it a lot. One, it just it gives you your attention to maybe the areas we're struggling in. It seems that sometimes terminal serves that win-loss doesn't really dictate whether we're serving tough or winning that serving battle, because you could be missing a lot of serves, but then getting a lot of knockouts and stuff like that. And you wrote recently on the knockout percentage and how you like that. I guess how would you weave that in to stat taking, or you can even just address, I guess, just how important that knockout percentage is and what it is?
Yeah, so just knockout percentage is if you knock the other team out of system, so they don't have an in-system pass. So I don't know if you're using a 3-point passing scale, then you force a 1 or a 2. And actually, sometimes I even find teams just like to do it like, did you force a 1? Because sometimes that 2 to 3 pass, depending on kind of how you're really judging that medium pass, is you're not, for a lot of teams and a lot of levels, that semi-system, you're still siding out like 60% or so. So then in that case, you just do it as more of a 1 pass. And it's a really nice way, I think, to easily evaluate servers, especially because depending on your level, a good mark might be 40%, a good mark might be 50%. In high school, good mark might be 60% or 2/3, 67%. So it's kind of like the good thing about knockout percentage is it feeds well into drills, so you can kind of figure out what the right goal is for your level, and then you can make these little mini drills. Okay, you're gonna it's going to be serve pass in this rotation, 5 balls. Same server is going to serve 5 balls, and the server, if you knock them out of system 3 out of 5, you win. And passers, if you get 3 out of 5, passers win or something, or you kind of a wash or something like that. So that's pretty good, and I like keeping that during the game. And what you said about triangle is true, and it's interesting. The terminal serving, especially sometimes in a shorter sample size, because hey, we might have won that set 25-17, which means we served 25 times, which also means we can miss more serves. And especially if you're at the collegiate level, especially if there's any kind of spin serving going on, where you have servers taking a little more risk, serving more can actually mean that you end up losing that game. Whereas if it's more of a 25-23 sort of deal, you're going to see that terminal serve. So it's interesting where the terminal serve tends to affect close matches a bit more, because you don't have this skew where one team is serving more than the other team. And that problem is not as big of a deal, for example, in high school or club volleyball, where ace to error ratio is typically higher than 1. So in high school volleyball, it's typical that good servers can serve 2, 3 aces per missed serve. But in college volleyball, it's 1-to-1. It's actually a bit below 1-to-1. And for most college teams, it's closer to like 3 missed serves for every 2 aces is more typical. So if you have, and likewise, if you lose a set 17-25, it's very possible that the other team missed 3 serves and you only missed 2, and each team got ace 1 time. That's pretty common. So it would kind of look like you won the serve pass battle. So I think like on that, if you're looking if your question kind of is about, hey, how do I use it within a game? I think that's a pretty good strategy, that you look more at the knockout percentage. And then if you're kind of looking more at a season, or you're looking at more close matches, then the terminal serving is a nice one.
No, I think that's exactly what it was, because we played like a top team that took it to us. And I was like, oh, we beat them in serve and pass, or the terminal serves, and that was the scenario.
But I bet if you looked at the percentages, so I bet if you looked at your in-system passing percentage, it's probably lower than those, but they were just serving more. Yeah. So I mean, the good thing is you didn't lose because you got aced off the court, but you probably then lost because you couldn't first ball side out, because the passing percentage was probably too low.
Correct. So some other than yelling at their players to talk more and communicate, something I hear coaches say a lot is talk about their team's energy. And it's like, we're losing because we're not fired up. And that seems like in timeouts, a refrain I hear, especially like at the club level. Is team's energy something you think about? Like, how would you measure that or improve it? What are your thoughts?
Yes, I think energy matters a lot. I kind of put these 4 things that I think as players have capacities for, and therefore as coaches we have the ability to influence, and that's attention, intention, power, and energy. So it's like intention, like what you're trying to do in the play. Attention, that's like what you're focusing on, right? This is like the whole internal, external, and attention. And then you have the power, so that's like how you express that in a short burst. And then energy is right. That's so like power is energy or work in a unit time, and energy is kind of like the how much capacity you have to keep it going. Like energy is like your battery, right? So I think it matters a lot. So I think and it's real individual. So first of all, I think that there's like a what was it? Marv would say fatigue makes cowards of us all. So first of all, there's like a physical nature to energy. So like, hey, this is why a lot of times 12-year-old teams can have high energy, because there's not a ton of power output because they're so small and stuff like that. And hey, 12-year-olds, they haven't been beaten down by life just yet. So like they're pretty enthusiastic. So they have a lot of physical and mental energy. And on the beach, right? Like, hey, you might have that 6th match. Like if you had to come out of the qualifiers and then you had to work through and work out of the challenge bracket, like on Sunday or whatever it is, the energy might be low. You might be trying to summon it, but just physically, your physical battery is a little bit spent. So I think those are some considerations. In the club level, I mean, it literally could be, did you get a good night's sleep before? Did you eat breakfast? What did you eat for breakfast? So that is something that when I've coached a competitive club team, I have, hey, before your first match, if we're playing the first match, we try to be there an hour before the match starts. And, you assign a team parent that's going to bring, hey, agreed upon protein bar or help, something. And I ask all the players when they come in, hey, what did you have for breakfast? And if the answer is a bagel, all right, hey, grab a protein bar from the snack bag or something like that. Because, yeah, you got to eat a little bit more than the bagel. You can't just have 150 calories or something like that. So, and then same thing, if you're looking towards the last match of the day, hey, what did you have for lunch? Or are we playing right after that time period and everybody just shoves some nachos in their face, it's going to be a little, I mean, so you have kind of that physical capacity of energy. And I think people do kind of underrate that a little bit. And then kind of make it all a mental process when it is a physical process. I think it is a physical capacity. And then it's also, I think your training, is your training, like what kind of energy level do you have in practice? Because I think that we can and should ask for at least that much in a match, probably hopefully a little bit more. And especially like, I don't know, I think about like high school match or college match where it's one match, you have more like specific preparation and focus for that. For club volleyball, I do think sometimes, you're playing in a convention center 2-day tournament. Sometimes all the matches blur together. But so what kind of energy level do we have during practice? And I'm going to judge that as that's about our capacity that we want to be operating within the match. And so then there's one of two problems. So first problem could be, hey, we're in the match and our energy isn't super high, but it's about the same as the energy in practice. Okay, all right, so that just tells us, hey, we got to build our capacity physically and mentally for energy level in practice. We got to, I don't know, we got to compete more. We got to find games that we get fired up about. We got to be high five, whatever your stuff is about energy. The practice level energy's got to raise, or practice energy is higher, or just match energy is not higher than practice, because you'd expect it to be a little bit higher. And then that's the case is like, what's the blocker? I usually think more like it's less about boosting energy and more about not blocking it. So like, I mean, the common source is you're not playing. Hey, so I had energy in practice because I was getting to play, and now I'm sitting on the bench, so I don't have energy. So you got to talk about, so is there, like, how do you unblock that? Or my energy is low, like I'm playing, but my energy is down because I'm just thinking about my mistakes. So that's like a really common energy blocker, right? You're thinking about mistakes. So a lot of this comes back to, again, like with all these culture answers, like I just have really pretty simple ones that I just try to do pretty consistently. So there's kind of two of them for me here, and one of them is just win the next point focus. So like it's like the most trite thing in sports, right? That we're just going to focus on winning the next point, because that unblocks a lot of the energy blockers. Like if you're thinking about the last point, that drains your energy and you have less focus on the next point. If you just manage to put your focus on the next point, then you're going to have less energy blocker because you're having less about that. If you're worried about your playing time or not, or whether you've been in the game or not, you're not all focused on helping win the next point. And maybe all you can do is cheer from the bench or call out tip or free ball from the bench or something like that. Or at more sophisticated levels, okay, high level college ball, maybe it's when you're the setter and you're not in the game, your job is to watch the opposing block. So this would be the specific case for me on my team. If you're setting and you're in the game, your job is to beat the block and create opportunities for your team to score. And when you're the setter that's not in the game, your job is to be studying the block during timeouts or something like that. Help give that information. Are they fronting? Are they pinching? Are they staying spread? Okay, so then you kind of have these jobs and these expectations. So that's the one thing is win the next point focus. And then like, hey, how do you do the mechanics, all those unblocking? Hey, there's better people than me. I know that you're supposed to do them, and I try my hardest to unblock them, but probably some of the nuances, you guys have had a lot of great guests on that. And then another kind of just thing that's sort of related to that is, hey, your job as a player on this team is to know your role, do your job, and support your teammates. And I think I heard that specifically from a Coach Your Brains Out guest. And I can't remember his name. I think he was the guy who's worked a lot with Creighton. And they had that like app.
Oh yeah. He wrote the book,
Larry Windman.
Larry Widman, yeah.
Yeah, yep, that sounds right. Yep. So I think he was the one who said it. And I like, oh, that's great. Write that down. That a simple numbered list that I can teach people. Okay, I can get my head around that. So that's what I just say to players all the time. Hey, here's your job. Like, what's getting in the way? Like if you don't know your role, and also in that also accept your role, If that is causing a problem, then that's going to drain your energy because like some of your material, like some of your mental space is going towards that. And then like, okay, doing your job. Are you focused on doing your job, or are you focused on all these other factors? And then are you supporting your teammates? So like, if those three things are in reasonable shape, and you're focused on winning the next point, energy level, I think it's going to be pretty good. I think it's going to be like it's going to be up to your capacity, and then like just over the long training time, that it's got to raise. But I think the coaches want to like try to have some artificial way to boost it in the short term. And I think in the short term, all you can do is unblock it, and then in the long term, then you got to train it. You got to train it physically, and you got to train it mentally.
This seems like one topic that really falls into the we statements you brought up. Like, we've got to bring more energy. This like, kind of broad
Yeah.
where maybe
Yeah.
Billy was super focused and locked in, and you can't see him like jumping around, but he's himself and he's locked in. And then, I don't know, his buddy Casey is normally dancing, isn't actually dancing around today. So kind of lose track of, that's where you gotta like treat each person like an individual, understand what their energy is like. And when you do that, then yeah. But yeah, it seems like the we statement trap really you would fall into that.
And I think that's so one of the things I put kind of in that same sort of article was basically turn words into works. So it's like, so hey, what does that mean? Because and players will say, hey, yeah, we got to talk out there. Okay, so if we talk, what volleyball plays will that change?
Yeah.
If we have energy, what volleyball players will that change? So that could be different again for different, or like I said, hey, supporting your teammates. That again, that's kind of like words. So hey, for you, what does supporting your teammate means? And so for some players, it's like, hey, I'm going to get hyped. I'm going to give high fives. I'm going to cheer for everybody. For some players, it means like, I'm going to cover every single ball. Like, hey, maybe I'm not going to always be like the loudest cheerleader, but like I will cover every ball. I will pick up every single tip. Mm-hmm. That's an awesome way to support your teammates. Yeah, like that's great. So, great. Hey, so I think if you kind of unleash the individual capacities of each player, right, then you're multiplying it up rather than some of the parts.
Yeah, much more meaningful. Cool. Going on to external cues, and we kind of talking about this a little bit, but especially as you're doing it in Korea. But is there any external cues that you've been using that are really hitting home that have been effective recently?
Yeah, so there's kind of a few ones here. So first of all, there may or may be some cues that I have no idea what they are. So because we've had a couple of these sort of meetings where we've written stuff out on the whiteboard, and I've said, hey, here's how I write it out in English. And the translator, Izzy, hey, Izzy is gonna help you like translate these literally, but the literal translation is like not going to be what we're looking for because it's just, hey, I write it, and sometimes I'll say it, and because they can kind of hear it in English, and I'll say, you have these like little catchy phrase, and I'll say like, hey, a real simple example is swing through the ball, right? And this is Nick Winkleman. This is his 3D cueing. You have a noun, you have a verb, a preposition, and a noun. So the verb is the action, the preposition is the direction, and the noun is sort of the distance or the kind of the gauge. So swing through the ball. That's the most simple way to say the swing is the action, through is the preposition, that's the direction, and then the ball, that's the distance, right? So by changing any one of those factors, you change the intent of the action. So if I said push through the ball, that would give you a different mental image than swing through the ball. And if I said hammer through the ball, that would give you another action. And if I said swipe through the ball, right? So those all would give things. And also if I said swing through the ball, that's the preposition. Now if I said swing over the ball, swing under the ball, swing around the ball, swing to the ball. Swing to the ball has a very different feel of an action than swing through the ball. When I said swing through the ball, you guys probably imagined I was talking about spiking. But if I said swing to the ball, maybe you would even think about I was talking about passing. Now, swing is not a great margin for passing, but maybe if I said push to the ball, now maybe you're thinking I'm talking about passing or defense. Whereas when I say swing through the ball, now we're thinking about talking about spiking the ball. And if you change that noun, so if I said swing through the net, well, that would be a different action. If I said, if I said, swing through the sideline, swing through the ceiling, swing through the floor, those all give you a little bit of different feel for what that movement will be like. So I've kind of tried to give them that little lesson. Seems to be sinking in a little bit. And then I actually said, hey, now you all need to sit down and try to make up some of your own cues. And there we have one assistant coach who speaks like speaks a little like decent English, kind of borderline conversational English. And like I've actually like I've given him the Winkleman book and say like, hey, try to kind of like try to work through it in English. I'll help you kind of get through it a little bit. And you know, kind of like I rely on him a lot to be the bridge because our translator is not necessarily a volleyball person, so she can have the more literal stuff. But I kind of work on him, and then it's like, hey, okay, setters, here's like the concepts, here's what they are in English, and here's the literal translation. Now kind of work out what you want the Korean words to be, and we'll like I'll be there for these conversations, and then they're kind of saying like, hey, like what do you think about this? What do you think about this? But they've kind of come up with some of their own cueing there, and I hope they're good because I have no idea what they mean. So, but then some of the stuff. We do use some little English stuff. So spike, you know, like so spike is there's no Korean word for that. That's just they use the word spike. And sideline. So like again, there's not really like a Korean word for sideline, or maybe there is, but everybody uses the English word sideline. So like for example, for middle attacking, like spike to the sideline, spike out the sideline. That's something that we talk about for middle attackers because we want to create these angles and we want those balls bouncing up, you know, hitting out the sideline rather than turning back into the center of the court as middle attackers. So like that's an external cue that's helpful and kind of that's in the broad category of a couple of these things, which is sort of approach cones and so if we kind of just talk about like for middle attackers, especially for pipe attackers, and then to also a degree left and right side attackers, but it kind of depends more on if they're coming outside in or inside out. Kind of basically even kind of taping out some cones or runways as these visualization. So you might have, so we kind of have like the launching pad where you want to get your second step on some of these various attack routes. So that's an external cue, you know, a launching pad. That's kind of an analogy. Okay, your second step is going to hit there, and then you're gonna launch down the runway. So sometimes we'll tape out kind of these cone-shaped runways or linear runways for where players are taking their approaches or kind of spiking the ball. So we've kind of done some stuff like that. Hey, for middle attacking, kind of drawing, taping out cones on the floor from kind of where that ball might leave the court back to their approach takeoff point, and kind of visualizing getting to the point of that cone and then spiking the ball through that cone. Taping, either using tape on the net or antennas moved for setting windows. So setting the ball into this window. So that's something that I've been doing this for a long time. It's very helpful in here. For me, the left side setting target it's a 1 meter wide target, and it's the median point is 1 meter in, which means the leftmost antenna is a 0.5 meter in, and the right part of that window is 1.5 meters in, right? So that makes sense. It's a meter wide, centered around 1 meter. And there you go. Set the ball, and hey, set a left side hitter, and the hitter's got to hit the ball through the window. I mean, just right there. There you go. It's hard to do it if you set it too tight. If you set it tight and wide, you hit the ball into the antenna a lot because the ball is outside that you know, because you're bumping that in a 0.5 meter from where the antenna actually would be. So if you set the ball tight and wide, you're going to be all inside. You're going to hit that antenna a lot. And then sometimes we'll go from there. It's like, okay, you got to hit the ball line inside the window, and you got to hit the ball cross outside that window. So that window ends up being a great ball for hitting the ball down the line. Okay, you're contacting that ball somewhere between 0.5 meter and 1 meter inside. That gives you the space to hit the ball down the line, and you can either tool the outside hand or hit it clean into the court. And we typically not do this against the blocker because I don't want to have the antenna blocker hand interaction there. So just typically with no blocker. So kind of set the ball into that window and you hit it line, and then you set another ball and then you hit it cross. And again, here's the deal. If you set the ball tight, if you set the ball too far off, it's hard to hit cross as well because it's hard to keep the ball in the court. But if you set the ball tight, you're going to hit that ball cross and you're going to catch that inside antenna because the ball's going to be too tight for you to clear it. So this is also kind of, but then this is exactly what happens to the block, right? So it's like if you set that ball tight and then the hitter is trying to go cross court, they have that kind of wrist away, that low wrist away slider that if the blocker gets their left hand down, they're going to stuff that ball. Whereas if that ball is a normal distance off the net, 3 to 4 feet off the net, you can go inside the block and still keep it down on the court. So stuff like that, that's kind of self-limiting, right? And then we have these windows on the net for setting quick attackers, and set to the window, get to the window. We have that kind of stuff. So that stuff is real valuable. And a lot of these things, there's a blur here right between the cue and the constraint, because the cue, I have less ability to make these great cues because they have to kind of go translate it. I'm not really sure what the image is going to be like. I even literally brought, I'm just doing a whole advertisement for Nick Winkleman in his book here, but like literally I brought the book out because it has he does that 3D cueing model and he actually has pictures of all these different verbs. So I'm literally pointing to them, blast, hammer, whatever, push, extend, okay, think of these different kind of things. But I don't really have as much for there. But if we practice it with kind of a constraint, then even when you take that constraint away, I can still say, hey, set to the window. I get to, spike through the window, spike under the window, serving elastic, obviously like that. And so we do that, we do twice a week, generally, some sort of serve challenge where the ball's got to go under the elastic a little bit. And then, okay, then even when you take it off, okay, you can still serve the elastic. And sometimes we do the elastic and we bring the antenna to try to create this tunnel, right? So you have a narrower antennas right here that are maybe, people listening can't see my hands, but what I meant is we'll go out and we'll put a 2 meter wide, 2 or 3 meter wide antenna lane that they have to serve down, so it's more useful for line serving than cross court serving. And then we'll also add the serving elastic down there, so then it's you're serving down a tunnel. So we use that for some also landing positions. I've found are pretty good for teaching rotation. So that's a big thing with a lot of these players. So one thing that's pretty interesting, is kind of asking, our one assistant coach, long time, is he's in his 40s and then long time player here, national team player here on their men's team, really good player, and he's got sweet arm, right? Sweet, nice low arm, high snap. He just got really nice smooth arm. And so I'm kind of asking you, hey, why do you swing like this? And all our girls, their arm draws back straight over their head with this really high elbow. And he's like, well, they do the women's swing and I do the men's swing. And I'm like, I hate that. And that's bad because it'd be nice if more players on our team hit the ball like you, because you have this great swing. And we got a couple players that have a bit of a better lower drop, but a lot of them just have this really high overhead with very little rotation. And so working with some of these players on opening up the rotation, a lot of that stuff like that. So we kind of talk about this, the tree hugger rotation, kind of opening up your body there. So that's, they like that one, or finishing your swing in your opposite pocket. So you rotate it through rather than in your same side pocket. So if you're right-handed, you finish your swing in your left pocket rather than your right pocket. That's a pretty easy one to understand. And some of that, some of the landing positions. So when our middles, if we hit kind of more of that push set, kind of that right to left ball where middle's going right to left and balls getting set across their body. So they're pushing, kind of that push set. I think a lot of people call it push, and turning, so you're kind of turning it more towards one. So if you hit that ball and then you land facing the zone 1 sideline, there's a good chance that you rotated through the ball. And if you hit that ball and you sort of landed still facing the net, it's kind of a good indication that you kind of just did it all with your arm and wrist rather than rotating your body through it. So sometimes just that kind of stuff is good. And then so I think those are the ones when you guys email me, I wrote those down. I'm using those a lot. And actually, even sometimes I'm stepping on some of the arm swing stuff, but we'll do a couple throws. And so 1 or 2 times a week in a morning session, because we typically practice twice a day. So 1 or 2 times a week in the morning session, we we'll do just some more individual hitting type stuff, more kind of positional hitting. And a lot of times we'll do that. We'll kind of do some cycles where like they'll hit some balls on the court and then they'll cycle out and they'll just do 2 or 3 reps of like a throwing drill to cue some of that rotation. And then they'll get back there and hit. So I'm not a big fan of like spending 20 minutes throwing balls, but just sometimes like 2 or 3 reps to cue that rotation. And then say, okay, now that we're spiking, like kind of feel that same rotation. So sometimes it's almost like an exercise that gives you the cue. So hey, try to do it like this. And sometimes I give passers like PVC sticks while they're waiting for their turn to pass. Because you kind of hold you kind of imagine you're holding a PVC stick, like a broomstick, in an underhand grip. So like your palms are forward and you're kind of holding them down, like you're getting ready to pass, right? Like a passing ready position with your arms down and you're holding a PVC stick. And then you make an angle to your left or right. The PVC stick gives you like a good feel for, are you facing to the left, but not angling? So like, are you facing to the left, but that PVC stick now is, the stick ends are like parallel to the floor rather than keeping that stick perpendicular to the floor like you would if you were forming an angle, right? Your shoulders need to get down. Or like, are you twisting it? Like, and you'll feel it. Like a lot of passers, instead of like tilting their whole platform, they kind of roll they roll the arms of their platform a little bit. It's hard to kind of just shows on audio, but I think coaches kind of imagine a player that forms an angle by kind of tilting their whole shoulder complex, their whole platform, rather than just kind of rolling one arm over the other to try to get the ball to go. And when you're holding that PVC stick, you can feel it pretty, like it's a little weird to roll it. Like it's just kind of gives you that instant feedback. So we had a couple
like
passers.
a short PVC stick. Like how big?
I'd say it's like 3 feet long.
Okay.
Yeah, 3 feet long. Like definitely enough to get your full hands on it. Like it doesn't need to be 5 feet long, but like I'd say about 3. And I probably like a lot of, I don't know, some of you might need to make it, but like I don't know if your strength and conditioning coaches do any like Olympic weightlifting. They may have like some of those PVC sticks or broomsticks because sometimes people practice Olympic weightlifting with them. So I'm not a huge fan of that, but we'll use it for more productive things like teaching us how to pass. Yeah, so you can kind of do that, just kind of get the feel for that. And I'll say, okay, when we're making this angle, let's make the same angle that you made with the PVC. You know, like hey, stick pass is kind of sometimes we'll call it. So not actually passing while holding the stick, just to be clear. But it's like if you have partners and your partner's going to get 5 balls, and then you're kind of waiting off, just do a couple with the stick just for a little feel. And then when you come back on, okay, see if you can kind of replicate that same feel. So a lot of the external cueing I'm trying to link to like an exercise or a constraint, so then they can kind of remember that rather than just relying on my words.
Yeah, that makes sense. Building off you hit on some of the arm swing stuff, and I know that's something you've been diving into with a professional level player, someone who maybe has a really deep attractor well, who's done it a long time with his high elbow and doesn't use much rotation. I guess, do you feel it's still worth investing in? And as you've tried, have you seen people able to change it? And everyone says, oh, it's so hard to change an arm swing. So I guess, what have you found with these things you've been trying?
So I think I'm a strong yes and yes on that. I think it's never too late to change stuff. Never too late. And then I try to just have some realistic kind of expectations on that. So this is not arm swing, but for example, like, I mean, I have a 30-year-old setter who's been playing professional volleyball for more than 10 years and completely changed her setting footwork, completely changed the way that she jumps at. And we started basically from the first practice almost. So I constantly, like, I hear that in coaching, like, oh, I got a player, she's a goofy footed, but she's a junior in high school. It just, is that too late to make a change? No, nope. Also, like, it doesn't mean that changing it won't make it worse. So I'm not saying automatically that everything that it changes is going to wave a wand and make somebody better. But I thought that this setting footwork was worth changing, and we started changing it from the very first practice, and now it's pretty good. And so the arm swing thing, I feel the same way about it. And then I also you want to be realistic, and sometimes I think about this also in the context of like language learning. So a lot of times you hear like, okay, kids are way better at learning languages than adults. But I think that's actually not true. I think kids just have no choice. Because think about it, like if you went to if with the two people that love you the most and you just moved to a foreign country and then those two people only and everybody else around you only started speaking one language and in 3 years you'd probably be reasonably fluent at that language.
I
You
would
know what I mean?
crush. I would crush 4-year-old Billy at
Well, that's what I
learning.
mean.
Yeah.
And I think, hey, I coached at BYU and a lot of people go on their mission and they learn to speak that language pretty good in just a few months. And then they go on their mission for 1 or 2 years and a lot of them are speaking um, a fluent or reasonably fluent in that language. So what I also mean by that is like, yeah, these players, they have these deep attractor wells for sure. And some of these things can be pretty challenging. But hey, they're also professional athletes. So they've gotten to this level by working pretty hard. So they have a really uh, they have a great work ethic. They have just some level of sort of like musculature, right? So like you take like a noodle arm 13-year-old and she like can't do a low draw rotation because she just has no core strength. Like her arm just flies just flies out the back of her swing because she just doesn't have the strength. So these players have a little more than that. And then also like, dude, we practice 6 hours a day on some days. So like we have the training we have the training time for it.
Wow.
So I think all of this has some value to it. Um, so so like reworking somebody's arm swing hasn't necessarily been the first priority with some players because for hitters, like some of the things like footwork and timing is more important in some of these things. And it also doesn't mean that like every single time they like do it with a quote unquote bad arm swing that I'm like yelling at them or stopping the drill or something like that. So like I think we're still doing all this kind of stuff, but like 100%, I'm working with a lot of these players on getting more rotation. So like 2 days a week, the first thing that we do, basically when we get on the court, is jump serving, and I'll do it from in the court with most of these players. So like they'll spike from like it's like a 3 meter or a 6 meter jump serve. So you're in the court a bit because I feel like for a lot of players, if your power in the women's game, if your power is sub elite, um, I feel that sometimes going from full 9 meters, it changes the swing and you get pretty underneath the ball just to kind of get it. Like it just kind of gets a little wonky. So I like a lot of times like 3 or 6 meters is a little bit more appropriate. Um, and like if we went further than that down to kids volleyball, sometimes even doing it on a lower net would be more appropriate because you want to be able to like swing and power through the ball. But like if you toss it for yourself, like right on the net, like a meter off the net, like where you would spike, I find there's like too much variability. Players are flying into the net and hanging themselves in the net. So it's like get off the net quite a bit. But then anyway, and so we do that. And I work on players on their rotation through the ball every single time. And I think like sometimes think about it as arm swing. I think just makes it think like you're just talking about where their elbow is all the time, which I think is the wrong way. So I think if you just talk about like, for me, I focus on the rotation. So I work on, and like in order to get maximal rotation, you probably have to draw your elbow a bit lower, like than a full like super high elbow draw. So it's hard to get a lot of rotation, but like you'll see, like I'm not like somebody's a little like I think ideally you want to be at the shoulder level or a bit lower with your draw, but like somebody's a little higher, like they can still get a decent amount of rotation. So that's what I'm focusing on the most because like I know for sure it's almost impossible to hit hard without good rotation through the ball. So so the rotation is what I focus on, and then there's some various cues to that. And hitting it off your self toss is it's a bit more linear. So, well, like your approach and the path of the ball is more linear. So therefore, it's easier to create the access point to rotate through. Whereas, like if you're the farthest example from that would be like hitting a fast set on the left side, hitting a fast set on the left side with an inside out approach. It's like really, really hard to rotate through the ball because the ball's like flying across your body and you're just trying to pick it off in space. And I think that's actually why a lot of players develop bad rotation mechanics in the first place because they're hitting these left side balls that are pushing across their head. So then what that makes me want to do is fight it away from me, like putting my thumb down and smacking the ball away from me, kind of scudding across court, and then kind of like tipping over rather than rotating through the ball. So a lot of that kind of spike serve mechanics, even if player's not going to spike serve, I think it transfers well and could do a lot of that rotational work. So I think it's valuable. So we do like, hey, you got to build some functional strength in your core to like be able to rotate through the ball. and you got to have some rotator cuff strength and stability. That's not any different than however you would swing. And then we do like sometimes some little throwing exercises. We just get some balls and we throw them against the wall. Just like do it 2 or 3 times and then go throw some balls. Go spike some balls, and then sometimes we cycle through that a few times. No magic bullets there, but
yeah, you have a great blog post on it and a great video session. People should check out where you were I forget their names, 2 Canadian guys, right? Where you went through a lot of things you could try.
Yep, Nick Del Bianco and Misha Barton, and
right.
They went through a lot of good stuff and a lot of good video on there. Yeah, I think it's worth at any time in any place, just cleaning up some of the players' ability to rotate through the ball and connect the ball cleanly. To me, it's the same thing as like passing posture, digging posture, block moves. I think that's all pretty similar. You're just trying to move better, and it's okay. I think if there's some variability to it. We know that variability causes learning. So
yeah, and long-term health too. If you can, especially with younger kids, can start to make these changes, they can feel better, play for a longer time. So definitely worth investing in.
Yep.
So you, as we're closing, just mentioned language and learning language. So how is your 4-year-old Riley, your 4-year-old daughter Riley, learning Korean versus you? Who's got better Korean?
Apparently, her pronunciation is a lot better. So it's a constant source of actually, I probably should have mentioned this, in the kind of the building the relationships, because probably the most consistent joke is just me saying anything in Korean at practice or the players' names. Just a constant source of amusement. One of the players' names is Sarang, and one of the players' names is Sana. And somehow when I say it, it sounds exactly the same to them. It sounds completely different to me, and it's totally different sounds, but it's just constantly they love it. They love it when I water it, or like come in for a water break is mulia, and the board is muya. And I thought it was booyah for a while, so I was saying booyah for a while, and then I just stuck with it because I said that I liked it better. And so yeah, that's so I'm sure my pronunciation is the worst, and they tell me that all the time. And but apparently Riley's pronunciation is a little bit better. I think she's mostly just a lot cuter than me. So they all love that. Yeah, she comes to the gym and all of that. So yeah, that's again kind of another a way to build relationships. So that's the old dad cheat, right? You just unleash your small kid on the team, and then they're all they plus 10% respect for you. So
yeah, important part of coaching. Have a kid around the team.
Yep.
Well, Joe, this was so awesome to get to connect with you again. We miss you out here in the US, but it's exciting to learn and hear about another adventure. You always have a new adventure and always learning in new environments. So I feel like you're one of the best people to learn from because of your curiosity, because of all those situations you've been in. And I appreciate you sharing it all, and excited to see how the season goes. When's the first match?
October 15th.
Oh, cool. Be fun to follow along.
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate you guys having me on it, and I mean it really sincerely to maybe like listeners of this podcast and stuff like that. I have there's an American assistant out here with me, and him and I we go back a long ways. We actually started coaching club volleyball together, and then went separate paths. And now he's out. I lured him out here to Korea with me, and we just joke all the time that everybody's a 14-year-old kid, and like every scenario that I've ever coached in, I've seen the same exact scenarios in 14 and under club volleyball, like for good and for bad and for everywhere in between. It's like it really is like all of the same principles. So it's like really all the stuff that you guys talk about all the time. And there's so many practices, like once or twice a week. Like I'm walking over to the gym and I listen to a Coach Your Brains Out episode, and it's like, oh yeah, yep, that's exactly something that I've been working on, or I just worked through, or oh wow, I didn't even think about that idea. So it's like really these principles are universal, and like for me, seeing like how different so many things are, but then like once you're actually like learning the game, how exactly the same it is. I would hope to give I don't know, any coach like just some confidence that like it's all the same stuff, it's all the same principles, and it's just a matter of like applying which principles at the right time, and then picking the lock of those individual players or those individual teams. So all your listeners should keep listening to Coach Your Brains Out.
No, that was one of my big realizations coaching college here for the first time for indoor. I thought it'd be like this big step up in like focus and intensity and seriousness, but yeah, they want to have fun.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, there's we played a little doubles jam ball with only left hand the other day, and just I mean, people were just falling on themselves just in fits of laughter, and it's great because like nobody's ever done that at a Korean volleyball practice before, so just the fun level is fantastic. So yeah, it's just it's awesome. Everybody's a 14-year-old kid, and that's also what makes coaching it so fun. And also, John, if you don't mind me plugging, because I don't think that we said exactly.
Yep.
The Substack that I write a lot about and put out a lot of this information. It's Smarter Volley, all one word, smartervolley.substack.com. So I appreciate if anybody wants to hop on there, and that's also the best way. I try to answer like every comment or question that comes through on there. So if anybody wants to kind of follow up with me about anything that's on this, just hey, leave me a comment. Often a lot slower to check my email, to be honest, but I always I try to respond to every comment on there.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for everything, Joe.
Cool. Thanks for having me.